slightly different from our hard disk drives are new drives known as solid state drives. Now, these are drives that are just beginning to come into the common stores, and you're able to see in new computers. And solid state drives work differently than regular drives in the case that they're actually not any disks that are spinning or moving inside the drive. In a solid state drive, also seen as a SSD, there are no moving parts. It's just one drive with memory chip on it. This solid state drive from the outside may look looks very similar to just our standard hard disk drives, except it may be quite a bit smaller, thinner, because it doesn't need as much room to work in there. It doesn't actually have any platters that it's spinning. Now, this gives us several advantages, one of them being obviously speed. We don't have to worry about rotations per minute because there's nothing moving. We just plug in the drive and we access information off of it. So that makes them extremely, extremely fast. It also makes them a lot more safe to moving and bouncing. If we have a hard disk drive, we don't want that disk to move or bounce too much, because of course the reader head and the actuator and the disks are all moving parts in there that we don't want them to be shaking around and damaging the information we have on the drive. With a solid state drive, that drive can move around while it's in use and it doesn't harm the drive at all. It makes for a lot more stable drive and a lot less chance for memory loss. Say if we were holding our laptop and walking around with it and we dropped it, there's a much less chance that any damage done to that laptop is actually going to be damage to the hard drive. Now, a downside to our solid state drives is how expensive they are. Solid state drives are not usually found in just your typical everyday computer right now, because they're very, very expensive. Even for, say, a very small 32 gigabit solid state drive, you're going to be paying a lot more than that same amount of space on a hard disk drive. In some modern laptops, we'll see situations where you'll be reading the information on the laptop and it says it has some solid state drive memory, but not all of it is solid state drive memory. It may have a reserved 64 gigabit of solid state drive memory, and then it may have the rest of the memory as, say, 1 terabyte of a hard disk drive memory. And that's going to give us the speed of solid state drive in certain information that we save on our drive that we need to access very quickly, whereas we still have the storage capacity of a hard disk drive for information such as Word documents that don't need to be read and written as quickly. As time goes on, we'll see more and more use of these solid state drives, because as technology progresses, they'll become less and less expensive and easier to make them bigger, and slowly may begin to replace some of the instances where we'd actually use hard disk drives. One thing to remember with solid state drives is we do not want to defragment these drives. The reason for that being, unnecessary reading and writing to solid state drives can actually cause them to prematurely fail. Whereas hard disk drives, when they start getting junked up and we start having unallocated space, we actually do a defragment on them. And we recommend doing defragments when we notice that that's happening. We never want to recommend a defragment on a solid state drive. For that reason, we mentioned the premature failures. Some newer solid state drives include features such as trim, which is a feature that allows us to delete that deallocated space without actually running a defragment, because that defragment again would ruin the drive early.